Hello there, and welcome back to Cloud with Chris weekly vlog number 13. You're with me, Chris Reddington, and here we talk about all things cloud. Now, thank you once again for joining. As I mentioned there a moment ago, weekly vlog 13. Incredible how quickly the time is flying by in 2021, so I hope you're all staying safe and well. I know there are extra waves of COVID starting to go around Europe, for example, so please stay safe, look after yourselves, and just stay safe and healthy is all I ask. So we're going to just jump ahead into things today, and you'll notice that actually we're releasing this on a different day today, so there is a reason for that. I have noticed that the weekly vlogs haven't been getting as many views or as much traction as some of my other content. I think first thing on a Monday morning didn't really work so well, so I'm going to try the weekend, see how that goes. So that's going to be my new regular cadence. We're also going to take a look through things in a slightly different order today as well. So rather than kicking off with the Cloud with Chris stuff, we're going to first kick off with the tech updates, so the Azure side, the Azure DevOps side, the GitHub side, then move on to the Cloud with Chris updates. And there are quite a few exciting updates on that front that I want to show as well. So with that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump across to the screen share. So there we go. We are starting to kick off here with the Azure blog, as we just mentioned. So I'm actually going to be doing a quick update on all of the posts this week because they were all quite interesting ones this week. And I think there was about 6 or so this week. So the first one was from Mark Russinovich on March the 22nd. And really it's just a blog post to highlight the session that he did at Ignite. I think I mentioned that in my Ignite set of updates, but I'm going to really call it out again. It was a brilliant session, talking all about some of the innovations from the Azure perspective, not just the technologies, but also talking about the data center architecture as well. So really great session. If there's one thing that you should watch from Ignite, I really think that is one of them that should be on your list. So check that out. It is on the Azure blog. Next up, there was an update from the Azure Compute SQL migration kind of team there, and this was all about at-scale agentless SQL Server discovery and assessment with Azure Migrate. So previously you had to have an agent, I believe. Now you can go ahead and perform that migration agentless. So a great update there. So if you're in that space looking at migrations, particularly on the SQL side of things, that is probably an update that you want to go and read over closely there. Advancing Azure Business Continuity Management. This was just a really interesting post, all from the team that actually managed the business continuity for Azure. And it's just a really interesting set of insights on how they define the resiliency levels for their services, how they test, and talk about some of their thoughts around availability zones, for example. Again, if you're in that space where you are architecting some of your own solutions on top of the Azure services, then this might be one just to go and have a look at, actually, because it might just light up some insights for you and just help you get on the same page there as well. So check that one out. Next up then, there was a blog post all around expanding DR scenarios to use zonal capabilities with Azure Site Recovery. So previously with Azure Site Recovery, it would only work across regions. Now it looks like they are doing zone-to-zone disaster recovery through Azure Site Recovery as well. So no longer do you need to have that active standby if you want that zonal capability, it seems. You can do that ASR approach as well. But of course, as always, I say it many times on this show, requirements are going to drive you in a particular direction. If you have a very low RTO and RPO that you need to go and hit, then maybe you still need to look at active. And this kind of disaster recovery scenario, this migration scenario, really only works depending upon what your RTO and RPO is. And I think where this works particularly well is if you need to stay within a particular geography or a particular boundary, for example, and maybe you have, I don't know, high latency requirements. Maybe your database is within the region, so when the compute goes down, for example, you want to migrate into the same region. So there are still scenarios where it makes sense to go one way or the other, but this is just another option in the tool bag for you to be able to go and try that out. So again, good update, but requirements, keep those in mind as you decide on those. Next up, an update all around strengthening. I'll read the title word for word here. Strengthen and optimize compliance in Azure Security Center. So they talk all about the Azure Security Center benchmark, or Azure Security benchmark, I should say. They talk all about audit reports and shared responsibility in the cloud, and then workflow automation for compliance events as well. So these are all features available in Security Center. And again, I find that things like Azure Policies, Security Center are sometimes those hidden gems of Azure, especially on the Azure Management Stories. So if you aren't aware of those and you may have some of your own compliance needs that you need to go and meet and maintain and hit, take a look at that blog post because I think that will be interesting for you. Now, this next one was all about Azure Databricks, so 5 reasons Databricks runs best on Azure. They talk about the unique engineering partnership, they talk about mission-critical support and ease for commerce, Azure ecosystem, native security, identity and compliance, and rapid onboarding. From my experience working with customers, Databricks does seem to be a very, very popular choice. And I think the fact that there is this strong partnership with Databricks is one of these great value adds that is there. I'll be honest though, I am not a data person by trade. I'll have mentioned that on some of my other shows. But I just wanted to call this one out because it would have probably been the only blog post I didn't call out from the Azure blogs this week. So wanted to make sure you got the same fair amount of love this week. But again, if you're looking in that analytics space, maybe looking at Databricks could be interesting. And then finally, I think we mentioned last week, there was a blog post all around enterprise landing zones. There is another one which has been authored by Thomas Maurer and co-authored by Sarah Lean, who is, of course, our next speaker on Azure Thames Valley, so coming up in April. So if you haven't gone ahead and taken a look at that yet, definitely go and take a look. And while I mentioned about Azure Thames Valley, today, so Sunday the 28th, is the last day that you have to complete the Cloud Skills Challenge. So again, if you are part of that community, don't miss out on the opportunities to be in with a chance for an exam voucher and in with a chance for prizes. Now, going back to the blog, they talk about here scale cloud adoption with modular designs for enterprise scale landing zones. And I really like this idea of a modular design, being able to take that kind of foundation, add things like your virtual WAN and your hub and spoke or whatever other components make sense for you and build that up in a modular fashion, because it's not necessarily like you need to go big bang and have everything in place at once. Realistically, requirements change over time. You probably identify these new requirements over time. So having that modular approach is no bad thing at all. And they talk through some of the reference implementations there and some of the considerations to be made on that front. So a great blog post from both Sarah and Thomas. Now, in terms of the Azure update side of things, here we go. We're not going to jump into any of those in depth, but I'm just going to quickly rattle through these again this week. So, general availability, enhanced Azure dashboards experience for pinned log analytics parts. General availability, publishing VM images from shared image gallery to Azure Marketplace. Azure Container Registry now available in Norway East. Azure Automation is now available in UK West. Public preview of IPv6 support for Express Route private peering. AZ Copy version 10.9 is now in public preview, which includes importing from GCP to Azure Block Blobs. Interesting update there. Public preview announcing the new Power BI embedded analytics playground. General availability IoT Hub Azure Portal extension update. That one I will slightly comment on. I did read that one earlier on in the week, and there was something interesting there about the IPs changing in terms of if you're interacting with IoT Hub Azure Portal and how it communicates with APIs now instead of some proxy, I believe. So go ahead, read that one if you are using IoT Hub. It might just be worth being aware of that update. General availability, new VM series supported by Azure Batch. So take advantage of new VM sizes that are now available when creating your batch pools, including the latest HPC and GPU sizes, is what it says there. General availability of Stream Analytics runs on Azure Stack Hub, and public preview, service tags for user-defined routing, which is a very interesting update. Actually, I didn't catch that one earlier in the week, so that one has caught my eye. Having service tags for user-defined routing, very interesting there. Good, so those are the Azure updates for this week. Now let's jump over to the Azure DevOps blog, and I think we're going to be covering most of these. just to call out, the one that I won't be talking about is the fact that they've introduced Azure DevOps Server 2020.1 RC1, but just so you know, that is something that is now available in case you use that. So the first blog post is another in the series of the Azure Fun Bites. So this is an introduction to Azure policy with Stephen Moraski, and then Jay Gordon, I believe, is hosting that one, or it's at least a written blog there. I believe Jay's in the video as well. I haven't had a chance to watch that one yet. But again, Azure policy, I think it's one of those tools which is a hidden gem inside of Azure. I think it's getting a lot more traction and well known over the last few years or so. But a great, powerful way of ensuring that you're enforcing some level of compliance there. So take a look at that. Next up then, we have another in the series of the on-prem to the cloud. This time it's all about DevOpsing everything as code. And I think I mentioned it last week, but I am such a huge fan of Star as code. You know, everything can be code. Your database migrations, your infrastructure, your application itself, your data processing pipelines, whatever it may be, can probably be defined as code one way or another. So in this one, Abel and Zachary Deptower talk about this in the blog post. They also talk about this in a video as well. So there's two different ways you can go and consume that. And again, really great content there. So go ahead, check that one out, because they have some great examples and talk also about how Azure pipelines can go and enable some of that as well as GitHub Actions they talk about, I believe there. They use the GitHub repository, but they're using Azure pipelines. Again, some great integrations between Azure DevOps and GitHub there as well. Very extensive blog post, as you can see if you are watching the video. Good. So next up then, stories from the DevOps community, and there are 4 selected this week. So first one is about how Azure can help your company expand in multiple regions. Next up is Bicep meets Azure Pipelines. Next up then is Azure DevOps automating domain controller promotion. That's quite an interesting use case and scenario there, actually. Might have to take a read of that. And Terraform Remote State Part 2 using Azure. And again, I'm seeing a lot of love happening in the Terraform space from the community as well as of late. I know Johnny Chips has been releasing a bit of a series all around that one. And then another blog post here from Peter Detender, again on policy, but this time using policy as part of the release pipeline. So the title of this blog is Controlling Release Pipelines with Gates and Azure Policy Compliance. And again, fascinating use case there. I really love the fact that you can bring in these policy checks and checking whether your rules are compliant before you go and release into a particular environment. So again, making sure that your environment is compliant and in a way that you expect it to be before you go ahead and deploy. Great demonstration of how that works, and very thorough blog post. So again, Peter the Tender has some great content that he releases there. Good. So now over to the GitHub blogs. So again, a few blog posts we'll cover this week. There were some which were more general that I won't cover. The first one is GitHub capture the flag results. So I think I mentioned either last week or the week before, either way, within the last few weeks, one of the blog posts where GitHub were having this capture a flag competition, and it was all focused around GitHub Actions and being able to use GitHub Actions workflows in a secure way. And the first person who solved the challenge, won the game, if you like, solved it in 1 hour and 40 minutes. I think that is brilliant, actually. Really well done there. And what they talk about is in this blog post is the solution and the challenges here. And they talk about how you can get some read-only, it's supposed to be read-only privileges, but then how they're able to effectively output various bits and pieces and actually commit to the repository. So really fascinating and interesting blog post on how there was that potential vulnerability in a GitHub workflow, and just helps you remember some of those best practices that you need to keep in mind there. So take a look at that blog post if you are considering using GitHub Actions, because it talks about some of those recommended practices there as well. Next up then, solving the inner source discovery problem. This is an interesting one. I'm a big fan, as I've mentioned numerous times, of GitHub Actions. And what this post talks about is, using a platform to go and make inner sourcing of your repositories more discoverable. So how do you make sure that people across your team are, or not just your team, I should say, across your organization, are understanding what repositories are there and being able to contribute to that and share, amongst the teams, etc. there. And really interesting blog post talking a couple of approaches that people have used to do that. So one is about the SAP Inner Source Project Portal. Another is all about, I think they have a solution called Enterprise Showcase, a static website hosted on GitHub Pages. So a couple of options there. So if that's something you're looking at for an internal company strategy, might be a blog post to go and take a look at there. Next up, a blog post from the GitHub Security Lab. They talk all about how there are a series of different exploits that led to them having a full exploit chain and being able to get privileged access. Not necessarily related to GitHub, just in general, from a security perspective. And they talk about these kind of various stages of how one potential vulnerability or exposure, and you chain those together into a wider piece of impact and fitting those pieces together. So fascinating read, really enjoyed reading that one actually, and they do deep dive on some of those individual parts as well. So again, if you're interested in how the GitHub team and the security lab think about this, take a look at that, because they talk all about some of the vulnerabilities they combined around Google and Qualcomm Android system components there to get access to the kernel. So quite a nasty exploit there, or set of exploits to get to that stage. But just really, really fascinating again. And I'll say it again, I think GitHub is doing some great stuff in the DevSecOps space, and this just highlights that. So take a look at that one. Then there's another blog post on how GitHub Actions renders large-scale logs. So if you think about the logs that you get from GitHub Actions, they may be quite verbose, of course, and what they talk about is how they load those in an efficient way. So this is more of a design or UI UX kind of blog post, so if you're interested in that, that could be an interesting one for you to take a look at. So we're going to look at Cloud with Chris and the updates from this week. So, of course, a week ago was vlog number 12, which was, of course, is 3 months of the vlogging. Loving doing this. Please, if you are enjoying it, let me know. Hit me with the likes, hit me with the subscribes, please, because that helps me know to keep doing this. And I want to keep improving this. I want to make sure the content is relevant for you. For example, putting the tech updates first and the Cloud with Chris stuff second. So again, please let me know if you like that or what you want to see more of or less of there. So that was last week. Then on Tuesday, I released a Cloud Drop. So in case you haven't seen, the Cloud Drops is a new series I'm creating where I'm trying to keep the content less than 5 minutes. That one was about 5 minutes 30. And this one was all about introducing and setting up Git LFS, or large file storage. And that got some good love there. But the one that really got well loved actually was the one I released on Wednesday. So how does Git work behind the scenes? And what I talk about in that one is how the kind of Git internal objects relate to some of those common commands like git init, pull, push, committing, etc. And what the object representations are behind the scenes with commits, with trees, with blobs, for example, and the kind of internal structure in the .git folder. That's got over 300 views. I think that's now my most viewed video on the channel so far. It's got about 18 likes or so almost approaching 20 likes. So that has obviously really resonated within the community. So if there's something particular about that you like, if you like those more advanced concepts, or you like stuff about Git, for example, let me know, because I want to replicate that, of course. I am going to be focusing on these Cloud Drops over the coming weeks and months. I am going to aim to try and get at least one out a week, depending on time commitments, of course. But I find them very fun to go and make. So let me know what content you want to see in those, because, again, bite-sized videos, I appreciate that not everyone has the time to listen to these full podcast, vlog updates, etc. So bite-sized content there. And also on Wednesday, a blog post to go alongside the cloud drop from the previous day. So all about how I use Git LFS inside of Cloud with Chris. So how I use it to version my podcast audio files and then trigger releases to production efficiently with GitHub Actions. Now, what's interesting is I posted this on Reddit and there were some discussions about I posted the cloud drop on Reddit, and there were some discussions about people's preference about using Git LFS, and it has an interesting reputation in the community, is what I stumbled upon, I guess. But either way, what I talk about in this blog post is exactly how I use it, how it's empowered me, and how it's solved problems that I had in terms of automating the release of my MP3 files, and it works really well for my scenarios. So again, check that one out if you're interested there. And then on Thursday, I closed this one down actually, but let's go down to the talks. On Thursday, we had a session on the MS How To Live, so I was invited by Murtietta, of course, talking about DevOps this time. So the recording is not available yet, but as soon as it is, I will make sure that the site is updated and that it's all available there for you to go and take a look at. Then on Friday, we had the live stream with Isaac Levin. Brilliant session. Very Git focused week this week because that one was all about accelerating .NET to Azure with GitHub Actions. Great session. Unfortunately, had some issues with the live stream and the recording at the beginning of the session, so I've re-released that video. So you may see two instances on YouTube. I will remove the original live stream at some point, but I had to re-record the initial introduction and also the ending because for some reason my sound cut out. I'm not quite sure why. But yes, that was a great session. Isaac, very enthusiastic about .NET, Azure, and GitHub Actions, and talks all about how GitHub Actions can enable you to deploy your applications to Azure and in fact accelerate you. There were some things I learned during that session and how the tooling with Visual Studio is absolutely awesome, and I hadn't realized how far I'd come along because I mostly use VS Code these days, so I'll need to go ahead and take a look at that myself as well. So what is coming up this week? I will probably be doing another couple of cloud drops, or at least one anyway. I'm not quite sure on what yet, so if you have a request, let me know and maybe I can squeeze that one in. On Wednesday, I'll be doing a blog post. I probably will do a blog post to follow up the kind of Git internal session that I did for the cloud drop, actually, given that it just went so well. I want to follow up that with anyone who's more interested in reading the scenarios instead. So I think that's what I'll blog about this week. On Wednesday also, yes, I will be live with Sarah Lean and a number of other folks talking all about blogging platforms which are available. So I think we're kicking off on 6:30 on Wednesday, and there's a few folks there from the community who are going to be involved in that. So I would name them all, but off the top of my head, I know I will forget someone. But either way, it's a great panel. It's going to be a great session. I'm really looking forward to it. And this is my fault for not having it up on screen ahead of time. Completely forgot. But yes, that will be coming up on Wednesday. On Thursday, I don't think anything is happening this week. But on Friday, then we've got a session coming up with Peter Piper once again, talking about external config and the claim check patterns. That was a really fun one to do. So of course, another of the Architecting for the Cloud One Pattern at a Time series. Now, one other thing. A couple of other things. There is a lot going on in the, I guess, talk space this month. So on the 6th of April, which is not this week, but next week, I'll be talking with the Northern Azure User Group, doing my talk on how GitHub Actions can help in building and deploying a static website and more. And the other speaker for that is going to be Scott Hanselman. That's going to be a really exciting talk. Really excited actually to be on the same lineup as Scott Hanselman there. So that is on the 6th of April. And then mid through April, there is a virtual conference called Global Azure Bootcamp, or Global Azure, I think it is these days. So I've got a couple of talks which have been accepted. So I'll be going live on Friday, April the 16th at 6 p.m. and then Saturday, April the 17th at 1 p.m. So the Friday session is going to be more focused on the I guess, components of deploying a static website using Hugo, using either storage or static websites, and using CDN. And then the Saturday session is going to be more focused on the DevOps side of that. So dealing GitHub Actions, dealing with deploying and how I use that with Cloud with, got a hiccups, dealing with Cloud with Chris there. Then I've got a couple of other sessions later on in the month as well. I've got a session with Leeds Azure, for example. I've got a session with the Glasgow Azure User Group where I'm doing a lightning talk, and I've got a session with DevOps Knots. So I'll update on those in the coming weeks. But yes, April is a busy month actually for talks. So I'm really looking forward to that. Now, one other thing, as I mentioned, you may have noticed a couple of changes on the website. First of which is the new search bar at the top of the navigation page. So if I just search for Git, you will see all of the content now that I have written all around Git. So, very, very basic in terms of the search functionality I'm using, Fuse.js and a number of other things. Actually was inspired by some folks in the Hugo community about implementing that. So very lightweight, cost efficient and cheap. Does mean it's probably not the most efficient of searches, as I have to tune how it actually deals with the searching. So big thank you for the feedback to Peter Piper, because he's been advocating the website to a few folks, and I know this is something he's heard as feedback about, navigating through all the content and making it easily accessible. So thank you for the suggestion on the search, greatly appreciate it. And because of that, I was inspired actually, because I'm really focusing on the different series and types of content that I'm pushing out. Of course, I've mentioned that already. So you'll see in the navigation bar now, there is this new series drop down as well. So you can go ahead, click on any of these series items, and then just like the episode pages, you can see all of the episodes that have been released, what's coming up, and a brief little blurb about that particular series as well. And then, of course, the details to the Sessionize page if you'd like to go and talk on that particular series. So, that is, again, making the discoverability of this all much easier. So I'm going to keep improving the website. Of course, if there are things that you'd like to see, please let me know, because I am very keen to make sure that is the best experience I can provide it for you there as well. And I know there's certain things I need to go back, categorize and tag, etc. more efficiently. So I am working on that. It's just as I find the time to go and do that, of course. So I think that's it in terms of the updates. Let's jump back to the screen and close out here. So there we go. Quite a busy week this week in terms of what's gone on over the last week, but hopefully a bit of a quieter one this week. You know what I'm going to ask. If I just switch over here, I am now on 382 subscribers, so I'm really doing well in terms of approaching that 500 subscriber mark by the end of the year, but I really need your help to help me get there. If you enjoy the content, please give the content a like on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, because I am still seeing 90% of the people that watch my content are not subscribers. So please go ahead and subscribe if you are not already. And of course, hit the notification bell so you know as soon as there is brand new content available for you. Not just on YouTube, of course, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and as we've been highlighting there, cloudwithchris.com, where I am really trying to improve that experience. And of course, do remember, if you are listening on cloudwithchris.com, you can read the transcript as you go as well. So with that, thank you very much for listening to this week's vlog. As I mentioned, it is going to be a different day this week and probably moving forward. Would love your feedback. I'll probably do a little poll on Twitter just to see what people's thoughts are around that and shifting the days around slightly there. Any feedback, as always, is greatly appreciated, but stay safe, stay healthy, and until the next one, all I have to say is bye for now.